I do want to talk about the next fireside chat that we have coming up, which is one that maybe I'm a little bit less excited about. My partner Kathryn and I have been dating for a number of years now since I moved to Los Angeles, and she and my ex, who many of you know from the Romance Project, where she was referred to as Agassi, and that'll come up in the clip that's about to roll, are going to talk about me, and so that makes me more uncomfortable than maybe the scheming that happened in the last chat. Let's just jump into it. I don't have too much more to add. I'm definitely nervous about this one. I think it's the headliner for a reason. I think it's the one that people want to see, and I'm curious to see what happens here. I asked the shareholders to end control of my romantic life because I was going to ask Agassi to marry me. I detailed the amazing history of our relationship and flattered all of the shareholder involvement along the way. And I hid from them every problem and any doubts that I had. I was so focused on the share price that I let everything else in my life slide. At the point when Agassi needed me most, I wasn't there for her, and not just my relationship, but my finances. I'd taken on credit card debt. I was sacrificing everything, and then they suddenly decided I was a bad investment. It's the only time I've ever thought about just shutting the whole project down.
We're just joking. We're just kidding. We're just kidding, you guys. That's a did they just play us off?
No, I think we're on.
Okay. I don't want to kill you.
I don't want to kill you.
I like you.
I like you a lot.
We met in February of 2018. You guys had split up. Mike ran from the split, but you were in the Prius with him, basically, right?
I did drive him to college. Yeah, I drove him to college.
Yeah, and so
I took him to Target and I bought him a laundry basket.
Were you guys officially split up by the time he moved to LA?
It feels really long ago, and it's like I'm trying to go back there,
reconstruct it.
Yeah, because I haven't revisited that in a while. But like in my memory, there was not a really specific like we're broken up. It was more like you have to go do this thing. Mm-hmm. And you need a job, you need a change, this is where it is, and we'll see what happens. But I remember, like, dropping him off, literally going to Target, and, like, sleeping on the floor of the, completely unfurnished apartment, and then...
Which remained unfurnished, by the way.
I believe.
There was a desk that appeared at one point, and then I took him to college, IKEA college, and then we got him the desk.
So both his moms took him to college,
yes.
And he eventually maybe graduated, but... So then, like, the next day was his first day at his job. And I remember, like, going in at lunchtime to just be like, hey, I'm leaving. And there was sort of a moment in a courtyard where I was like, oh, we broke up. Like, watching him walk away, I had that sort of like, oh, that was that. Like, I don't think either of us was really, because it was amicable. And it was, like, there was no animosity.
And you had encouraged the shift, too.
Yeah,
which I think was pretty huge and freeing for him.
Yeah, and it was like, this needs to happen, whatever that means. And so I think we were both kind of like, well, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And so at that moment, I was like, oh, this is what that means.
Mm-hmm. I remember him describing that moment in the parking lot of just, like, very willfully turning around and walking back to his office.
Like, let's not do a turnaround.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's time to be done.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And feeling, and it was interesting because I was like, I had known of you, and there were so many things about you that I was like, she seems so competent and she's beautiful. And I'd read the Playboy article where you had been described as hauntingly beautiful, but I also knew that you knew how to do like demo work, and you were good at finances, and you were like a piano player, and like you rollerbladed around, and it was just like this person. And I think that at the beginning of my relationship with Mike, I felt like a serious like narcissism of small differences. I was just like, well, how am I not Marijke?
Yeah.
Which is like, we're kind of similar.
Yeah.
Is the thing.
Yes. Yeah. Similar humor, like there's a lot of things.
Yeah. There's humor. I think there's
competence,
a high anxiety of like not having a job. So we work very hard, like all that kind of stuff. And so it was just weird to be like, this person would definitely be my friend in real life, but there's this whole, body of work of hers and the relationship on the internet and enshrined in like a Wired article and the Playboy article and stuff like that. So it's just like so strange. And like, as a result of that, because you and I both don't own shares in Mike.
Right.
And
stakeholders, not shareholders.
That's right. Yeah, we have a stake in his life. Yeah, we love to share with him, but not own shares.
Yes.
And my decision to not own shares was very much based on like as sort of a reactive. That didn't seem to work.
Yeah, and I didn't know how much of that was you just exerting yourself, like, this is how I am, and this is my like level of comfort and engagement with the project, versus like, oh, I see what happened, and that's not how I want to play it. And also, like, maybe I just don't like that also, the publicity or the, like, storytelling or the...
I think, yeah, there was, the clues that I had were, it seemed as though it sort of, not facilitated, but sort of sped up the breakup with Willow, his girlfriend previous to you, because he had put the vasectomy vote out without really running it by her. So that felt sort of like a betrayal, like a disclosure that felt like a betrayal. So that hastened the ending. I think it hastened the ending of that. And then he took a while to not date. And then he did the romance project, and sort of, I guess he met you before the romance project. That stuff is all sort of like, the narrative is that he met you via the romance project.
Right.
But, and then because you had become such an active participant, like, and I am so like, if you ask me where my money is, it's like it's somewhere with some like yacht bros in LA. And I was so also kind of jealous of the fact that you were like, what is it called? Like an active, not an active.
Activist.
You were an activist shareholder.
Yeah.
And so you like voted yourself up. And I was like, I don't even know how to do that.
Well, and it's interesting, again, this is a long time ago, but like looking back on that, and the story that was told publicly was told partly because it's a good story, right? And it didn't necessarily reflect the reality of the experience. And as you just said, like, I had met Mike before that. And I had gone on a date with Mike before that. And in my memory, he was like working furiously to build the project because he wanted to codify the dates that we were already going on, you know? And it was like, oh, I need to get this in place so that I can like do this legitimately through this thing that I've created. And so, like the outside view of it is like, oh, this person just showed up like as if it were Tinder, and then like experienced this wild romance project, and then it took off, and it was, it's very like fairy tale. Yeah. But it just wasn't like that at all.
Did you watch him go out on dates with other people so that he would have the evidence of having kind of participated more fulsomely in the romance project?
Yeah, and I found it funny, because I was like, this guy clearly is interested. I'm clearly interested. I don't feel threatened by this project, but he also seems to be like a prisoner of his own making in this, and I'm just like, oh, okay, like you made this toy, and now we have to play with the toy, and we have to like do, and I enjoy the game. Like, the game's fun.
What part of the game that you did, like, previous to your other relationships, like, what was it revealing, like, about yourself or the structure of the relationship? Like, what kind of lens did the game put on you in a relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know if it put a different lens on me in a relationship so much as it just like engaged me, because I like iconoclastic people. I like people who think about life differently. And I was like, oh, this could be really interesting. Like, this method could be interesting. And also, I'm game for a lot of stuff. I'm just like, cool, like, let's try it.
Did you like the accountability element of it? Because that was part of the structure of the romance project that I really liked, was that there were the worksheets and the check-ins and stuff like that.
That part was actually really useful. And I had friends at the time who were like, you should write a book about being in a relationship because it seems to be working, and I think that if you framed that in any other way, it would just look like normal relationship advice. Yeah. Where someone's like, hey, you should intentionally spend time with your partner and make plans together and like decide on how to do it, But because it's like being forced into this like business, universe, it looks weird. And yeah, I mean, it was helpful.
Well, it's like a level of accountability and rigor that I think that, any sort of consciously minded person would want to set, like, would want to use in a relationship, but then it falls away because you get into your patterns, and suddenly you're just like, you know, eating dinner in front of the television, and
Right.
you're forgetting to have sex 3 times a week and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, Mike is, and you know this, like committed to the systems, right? For better or worse. And the system was a really big part of the beginning of our relationship. And that's fun, interesting, to some people threatening and upsetting, you know, but it came back throughout our relationship in ways that were really helpful. And, you know, when later in our relationship we were having a hard time, we started like doing weekly meetings, and those were really great.
Yeah.
And it was totally just like a revival of the worksheets, you know, like that is what it was. And it was really helpful.
And then when did it start to fall apart? Like, when did the system fail you?
Well, I don't know that there was a big system that really was in place that was holding everything together that fell apart. Like, that seems oversimplified. It's like there's a human, right? And it's Mike, and he likes systems.
Well, he is a system.
And he eats food and digests it and poops it. But he also, like, is, you know, he lives by this system. But it is, you know, a human with emotions, like, coming in and out of that. And so I feel like there were times where it was like, let's systematize this and like work on that. And that was really useful.
Yeah. Can you give me an example of that?
I mean, I think the meetings that we were doing like later in the relationship, you know, and it was structured where it was like every Sunday we're going to sit and we're going to go through this meeting in this really specific way. And that was great.
Yeah.
You know,
because you know, obviously I know parts of sort of the dissolution of it, and it's, you know, it's the stuff where like tragedy and trauma befalls most relationships if you are in, you know, like if you're post 25 and something bad happens, or you're going through something that, and it's like accountability is incredible in moments where you feel safe enough to be accountable. And I think that that's the strength of the project, is that like there is an accountability factor that is amazing. And then that is, you know, shared with the community. You get invested eyes on the problem, and then you can help get the solution through the invested eyes. But there are certain, you know, problems, traumas, et cetera, that are so emotionally complex that, you know, you don't even know how to address them within yourself, and then you can't address them within the relationship. And it's like that, to me, is like where the project not fails, but just like it can't go there. Like it can't go into the more nuanced emotional spaces.
Right.
And,
I mean, we were built on fun, right?
Yes.
It was like built on the fun and engagement, and that necessarily has to change in a relationship because of life. And being an adult. And so it was failing when it wasn't fun.
Yes.
Right. And it was failing for Mike when it wasn't fun.
Yeah. And it's like the thing that ends up happening, and I mean, I've been going through this kind of like hard time in the last like 6 months, just because of like, you know, like work stress, pandemic, this kind of thing, where I'm somebody who like loves to talk to my friends about what is going on and what is going wrong, but when you don't have the vocabulary for it, it's kind of impossible. So you start to go into a state of like defensive retreat, and so as a result of that, like I can only imagine that you know, when you have to adhere to a persona that you've created, which is like, you know, in Mike's case, KmikeyM, and but when there is real stuff that is happening that is supposed to be changing your personality, but you have to uphold the idea of this persona, like how alienating and strange it must have been for Mike, but also to have you in there, sort of watching the split happen. I guess I wondered what that was like for you, sort of like, you know, in the day to day.
Yeah, I mean, when I was having my own difficult time in my family, my brother died, like that was a really chaotic emotional time, and I don't think I was even at a place where I could be aware of really what was happening with Mike, you know. And so it was hard to watch or understand what was happening. And my experience was like, oh, this person wants to keep living life and move on, and I'm not really in a place where I can do that, you know. And so I think when I really started to see like, oh, this is falling apart, was that time when I wasn't getting support that I needed emotionally. And it was like, this person wants to keep having fun because it was so fun to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then
scientifically, it is fun to have fun.
It is like, it's just basic fact.
Yes.
There's type 1 fun, you know, type 2 fun.
Yeah.
And it was type 1 fun for a really long time.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm thinking of a really specific moment, like when, you know, we had talked about getting married, and it was like, it was more for me like, I need security. I need like something solid in my life.
Yeah.
And, like, I kind of bullied Mike into buying a house, you know, because it was like, I need to have something that's like just really...
Yeah, the semiotics of safety. It's like, you have a house, you have a
Maslow's
fucking
hierarchy of
contract.
needs. Let's just like build it.
Yeah.
And so...
And codify those, which is
Right.
like, that's the game of life.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, let's win. Okay.
Yeah.
And so there was this drive for security for me, and, you know, we bought the house, and then we had talked about getting married, and it got decided, like, that's what we're going to do, you know. And I'm not a person who has a lot of like specific like romantic ideals about life or whatever, but when Mike asked me to marry him, it was like kind of a letdown moment for me, because I was like, oh, this is sort of an afterthought, you know. But then he spent a lot of time like crafting the shareholder ask.
Right.
And for me, like in hindsight, I'm like, oh, this is Mike's, the project is his love language, right? Like play is his love language.
Yes.
That was his way of saying I care and like I'm engaged. But at the time it was like, oh, you care about that.
But it was at the
yeah,
them
like
and
it's
not
directed
at you.
here and
yeah.
and it was the disconnect of being like, that person can't see that this would make me feel better than, you know, doing it this way.
Yeah.
And so that's where it was starting to fall apart, where I was like, oh, the commitment to the project is actually so real that it's sort of
Well, it's like
other things are falling to the wayside.
Yeah. It's I don't want to say nullifying, because that feels like too much of a binary, but
right,
like
and especially in hindsight, it's like that's not what really happened. It was just perceived sensitively, you know, in that way.
In a moment of great vulnerability, and
Right.
also just the way that we are socialized to supposed to feel about the moment of a proposal and that kind of thing.
Right,
And so that's where
right.
like the idea of, you know, the iconoclast ends up, you know, like failing or being a disappointment, because it's like, you know what you signed up for, but at the same time, like so many variables like befell you at that point that
Right,
there's no
right.
way that you could have predicted that was going to kind of gut you in that moment.
in that particular way.
Yeah.
You know? And it's, I mean, I feel like I want to acknowledge this, like none of this is normal to other people. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like it doesn't feel weird to me, or, you know, we're sitting here together and it doesn't feel weird to either of us.
No.
But like, it is hard for other people to understand, and like even someone who's on board like me, or, you know, possibly like you or like other shareholders, can get to that place of being like, oh, the game needs to take a break. Yeah, the game needs to stop for a minute.
Or the game,
you know?
the game needs to sort of like find a new rule set. And I think that's the part where, you know, so it's 2017. Like, so on my end, you know, you guys have broken up. Mike and I have started to date. And I have like refused to buy shares, and I've made him like a PowerPoint presentation about like why, because I was like, love language possibly for him as
Yes.
a PowerPoint presentation for why I won't buy shares. Because his friends were like, why are you being such an asshole? And I was like, I'm not. I really am just trying to sort of like model my behavior based on what I'm seeing from like the experiential evidence that is like.
Yeah.
And so I made him this, and the conclusion of the PowerPoint presentation was just like, I'm about sharing and not shares, because it's just like, I don't like the idea of control in a relationship, even if it's play and fun. Like, I don't want to, like, I could buy Mike today if I wanted to, but I don't like the idea of buying Mike. And so there came that moment. I feel like I remember the exact date. It was like, I don't, but it was like sometime in early November, because I was on set shooting this show that I was working on. And a call came in from Mike, and he was like, Marijke wants to liquidate her shares. She wants to know if you want to buy them.
See, it's interesting because I don't remember that part of it. And Mike was like prepping us for, okay, what are we going to talk about? And he's like, ask why Kathryn wouldn't buy your shares. And I'm like, was that even on the table?
He asked me, he said, Marijke
He wanted you to buy.
He wanted me to buy them.
I mean, that sounds like something he would have presented to me, but
he didn't present it to you.
he must have.
Maybe
must
he
have.
did.
My like big black spot in the memory right here, but
I get this call. I'm in like a car
this
getting
seems so
driven.
stressful as a new relationship thing.
It was just like,
Like,
it was
too
stressful,
much.
but you
It's
know
like
what?
too
I was
much.
because I was on set, and like when you're on set, you're making like a million like
snap judgment,
contemporaneous
like, just, like,
decisions. So I was just like,
that,
and I was in
yeah.
narrative mode. So I was just like, okay, here's your problem. You got a low like shareholder rating because you've been completely not transparent about what your life is right now. No one knows that you and Marijke are broken up. No one knows that like the relation, like no one knows where G is. No one knows anything.
Yeah.
And it's like your whole thing is like community through capitalism. Like, let your community show up for you by being transparent and vulnerable with them. And like, I'm not going to buy your fucking shares because that'll just be too easy, and then I'll be saddled with the the share cancer of the relationship.
Well, I mean, it's interesting you say this because it's like you brought a good narrative to that moment, and I feel like this is something Mike's partners do for him is to like ghostwrite proposals and to like sort of provide the emotional backstory for like the stuff that's happening, where you're just like, I know why you're doing this. Here's the right like path. Like,
yeah, that's right. I know why you did the whole project. It's because of the core wounding of you're lonely. You're lonely. You grew up lonely. You grew up with 10 people in Coldfoot, Alaska. Like the reason that you want this is because you actually don't know how to like make friends or have a relationship. So you've like organized a structure, which is amazing as like as an evolutionary device and a coping mechanism. We see you.
Yes.
We see you.
But then also, like, I'm going to step in and, like, lift you up and, like, carry you to the next spot.
Exactly.
Set you down and
even though we were...
soften the blow,
Put our female human bodies in front of you to make sure that...
shields.
But we didn't hear much of the chat between Marcus and Patrick, the new shareholder, but I kept on hearing, like, Patrick's going to push Mike. Patrick wants to push Mike into uncomfortable spots. I love Patrick. Yeah. If you're watching, Patrick, let's have a call.
Yeah.
Would love to consult for you in the project. But like that's the part that I am interested in, because it's like, when he put your shares up for sale, at the price that you wanted, they disappeared within 24 hours.
They got bought
immediately.
Yeah.
And like the most surefire way to make Mike cry is to like remind him
his community will show up for him.
They love him.
Yeah, and they love him.
They love him, and everyone craves transparency, and everyone craves vulnerability, and no one's relationships are fucking good and perfect all the time. Yeah. And men suck at talking about their feelings, and it's like what I would love to see from the project, I keep on waiting for Mike to like burst in and be like, fucking shut up!
the Kool-Aid man.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no. But like what I want from this next part is that like, Mike is somebody who is like, I love him, and he's gorgeous, and he's charismatic, and he's insanely brilliant, and we joke around in the house that Mike has two feelings, on and off.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want this next part of the project to be like,
dynamic range. Yeah.
Exactly.
Let's,
what is on?
Range.
Like, what is on?
Yeah.
What's the color palette we're working with?
I thought he was only Project and Sleepy.
Yeah, I feel like on and off is essentially the same thing. Exactly.
I was trying to remember life with Mike, and I was like, it was either like project or asleep.
Exactly. Yeah, and if there is a trauma, asleep. Like I've never seen a more like narcoleptically minded person when something is sad. You're just like, Mike's napping. He must be sad. Does he want to talk about it? No, he
would like to sleep another 12 hours.
Exactly. Yeah. and it's like who knows what that is going to look like. But I think that is not only interesting, and scary like for him, but I think that for his primarily male community of shareholders would also be really interesting to like develop a vocabulary framework around like what actual, like when you're like, I don't fucking know what this feeling is, I'm going to work it out. Like what if the shareholder votes with like journal entries? Like
about the romance project was that Mike was he was writing the write-ups initially, and then he gave it over to his friend Richie to be his psychoanalyst.
No,
and
I didn't know that.
Really good. Like that was when it got good. And
I'm like, Jesus Christ.
So, I mean, incredibly thoughtful, loquacious.
Oh my gosh,
person.
Yes.
And she would basically like put him on a couch and do a little like psychoanalyst session.
I didn't know that.
And that's when it got more engaging, because it was like someone with like really great writing skills and narrative skills was digging deep into
translating the feelings.
Yeah, because I think Mike was sort of like, oh, I went on a date and we went here and we ate some oysters, and she's cute or whatever it was.
Yeah.
It was getting weirder and deeper, and so like maybe for him seeking out those people that push it, whether it's new shareholder, whether it's you making them go to therapy or whatever it is,
I think that we're in a moment, like, I mean, especially after like the last few years that we've had, where I just like, I don't know a lot of men, like, I mean, we're all, it's very hard to talk about feelings, but it's like, and I hate to be essentialist about it, but it's like, I don't know a lot of men who are able to like operate from a heart space and like, again, like speak in a nuanced way about this stuff. And it's just like, I feel like Mike could be, as he is on his own like journey of discovery, as somebody who's like has staunchly not done that, has by and large has not done that. I think he was to kind of like chip away at like the ice castle of his heart and brain and start to just like understand it in like a sensory way, find the words, like, do things that are not neat and tidy, like do a half of a, like what, again, like the other problem with the project is that it's a yes or no binary, right?
Right.
And it's just like, that doesn't work with anything that is of any existential, heft or merit.
Yeah.
Is to be like, should I not like my dad anymore? Yes or no?
Right. I mean, the other thing I'm thinking about is just, okay, so you decided not to buy shares,
yes,
and then you still haven't bought any shares.
No.
But
the onboarding process is also incredibly hard.
You find it, a little cumbersome.
Yes.
But I know for a fact how much support you provide to the project and how much like involvement you have, whether you want to have it or not. And so like, what is your involvement as a non-shareholder?
I think it's just like, I want to see the project achieve what I think was like the original purpose of the project, which is just like, it's hard to make decisions. Sometimes we have to use the friends around us. Sometimes we have to use our intuition. Sometimes we have to use a combination of the two. And I would love to see what the project looks like when he is using, I think he has to like build and develop his intuition. I don't think that he has a really well developed sense of just like, like purpose, intuition. Again, like it's such boring, like psychoanalytical speak, but like operating from heart space stuff. Like, I want to see what that looks like when it's developed and then when to bring in the community again, like the purpose of the project was great, but what does it look like now when we are in midlife? And, because the other, like, I mean, I think I'm almost like frantically being involved these days because, he's going to keep doing it. There's a world in which I'm like, I will break up with you. If you do not quit KmikeyM like today, I would literally never do that. But it's just like, it's like, what does it look like to do it in a way that is just like deeper? And
it's sort of weird because what you're talking about, like coming from a heart space and like having really strong sense of like what you want is antithetical to this idea of like what people perceive to be the like the fettering of free will, because I think that the reason that people hate this project is they're like, I would never do this.
Right.
I know what I want. Like, I know what I like to eat for dinner. I don't want anyone to tell me things.
Right.
And like,
but you and I are both very like French existential. That we're like I don't believe in free will. I don't believe in free will.
I know, and so I feel like it's a little bit silly and like bristly for people to have that reaction to it. But it is interesting, like how can you deepen sort of your sense of like the illusion of free will while like existing in the confines of this project that like appears to chain it.
Yeah. No, I mean, in a way, it's like, move the wine bottle, please. Sorry, guys. Sorry, guys, we needed it.
The teetotalers.
No, and you bring up a great point. It's like
would he have done the project if he had that sense?
Yes. I don't
know.
No.
But maybe the project is to get there. Like maybe the project is to go there, right?
I think the project, I think that I took him to therapy. I was like begging for him to go to therapy and he's like, I'm not doing it because you're saying it. And I was like, okay, fine. Like, and then finally I was just like freaking out. And so I brought him to my therapist. So we did like couples therapy within the framework of my therapy. And we were discussing something, but at one point my therapist was like, you chose her for a reason.
Right.
And he was like, ugh.
Like, this is your battle.
This
like,
annoying woman who is always asking me to get deeper in touch with my feelings, and my therapist was like, you fucking chose her.
You were going down that path.
Yeah, exactly. And
looked for a leader.
Yeah, and now you have her, and she's definitely like running
to shove you.
running in the direction. I'll be like, come on, like do some cardio in this direction.
Get a tow rope and just start pulling him.
Exactly. But I think the thing with Mike is that like it can't be with a tow rope anymore. Like he has to do it out of his own accord.
Well, yeah, it's not good for any relationship to drag someone into any place, whether it's self-actualization or anything else.
Exactly.
But yeah, wanting to figure out like how to help the project push him in that way.
And I think if I, like, to incentivize it, and I mean, what I loved about what Patrick said was that, like, he also thinks that, like, fine, put a fucking dollar amount on it. Your share price will go up if you go to therapy and start to have, like, a range of human emotion.
Yeah.
Your share price will go up. I don't care. Like, I mean, I'm a writer who, like, the reason that I have money is because I'm like, let's go to the grossest place within myself, cannibalize it, and turn it into a pitch. I swear it works.
Yeah.
And it works like in a soul way, and it works in a monetary way, and it, like I would love for it to like if
coalesce for him.
It would be cool.
Also,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. We have 30 seconds.
What very important things do you want to say? Oh, I want to say that
do you want to talk about Mike's penis?
Yeah. Friend called me this morning and I was like, she was asking what I was doing later and I was like, yeah, I'm doing this, shareholder conference for Mike. She's like, oh, the girlfriend competition? And I was like, this is what people are confused about.
Yeah.
Like they have this perception of the project and they're like, no, I don't like this. Like, what must they be doing? I laughed so hard. I was like, yeah.
One of them is going to die.
Well, yeah, so.
We both survived. Wait, we have 30 more seconds now? Did you guys put more time on the clock?
I guess so. We have stuff to say.
Well, I mean, I think my main thing is that I think everything's going to be fine because Mike knows how to make everything fine. But if I can't help him make it fine, I'm sending him back to you.
Okay, well,
and then he will live in a quad with Ashley and your partner.
Yeah,
Scott.
we're gonna have to add a story onto the back house for him.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. I'll pay for it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
So does anyone deserve to be talked about this much?
Are we done? Do we do?